Hello, excuse me. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Patreon podcast. This week, I wanted to talk about the idea of trusting yourself or listening to yourself in the past. And this is a really valuable thing to get comfortable with. I guess I should talk about my process of finishing albums. And I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but one of the things that I do before I'm finally done with an album is I listen to it over and over again. And I write notes. And those notes are sometimes, well, I actually have notes right here. The notes are sometimes like the saxophone is a little loud in this section, or maybe I'm pushing the highs too much in the mastering. And essentially, I have all of these, I have a big old page worth of notes that I write down every day or every time I listen to the album. And I go back and I make those changes in the song itself. Now, the problem is the way that I split up my files. I have the pre-master files, which is basically the project that I made the song in, and then I have the mastering file, which is a completely different project, and that's intentional because keeping those separate is really valuable to preserve the kind of tone of the album. But seeing that I have it in separate files, the pre-master files they sound different. They don't sound like the notes that I wrote about. So I have to trust my notes and make the changes that I wrote down and then validate that those changes still sound good. And it's really difficult, or at least it was really difficult for me initially, where I had written all these notes down, but then I didn't trust the notes that I wrote, so I had to go back in and I had to kind of just revisit all of these changes again and make sure that everything was still what I wanted it to be. And it was just a huge waste of time because I had already validated that it was wrong or that I wasn't happy with it. And it was tough. But once I got into the rhythm of kind of understanding what I meant and why I did that and remembering why I wanted to change it, I could just go in, make the changes, and export things out, and then listen to it again. And it didn't matter, or it doesn't really matter what it sounded like before I made the change at that point. It just matters if it sounds good now. And I mean, that's really my process, but it's also kind of an important lesson, I feel, to just learn to trust the notes that you wrote or the direction that you gave yourself in the past. Because it's something that you're going to have to do a lot as an independent artist is kind of manage yourself. And if you can't trust the notes that you give yourself, or if you can't trust the direction that you gave yourself for, like your daily to-do list, like this is your priority list for the day, you have to get this done. If you can't trust that, it's way more difficult to get anything constructive done on a long-term scale because you're just not able to be as efficient because you're always second-guessing yourself. You're always double-checking to make sure that what you told yourself to do is actually the correct thing to do. And it kind of compounds itself and it turns into something that is a little bit less easy to manage. So I feel that it's really important to get more into that, get into that rhythm, and it can be for a lot of things. Like I said, for me, it's the album mastering is a big one for me because sometimes, especially when the album is just complete, I listen to it and I just have this huge laundry list of changes, and it would take hours for me to go through and make all these changes and confirm that these are the changes I need to make, and it would just take way too long. But if I go in, if I open the project file, make the tweaks that I mentioned in the thing, export it and close it, it takes a couple minutes. And then I can sit down and I can listen to it again, and I can write down more notes, and I can even compare the new notes with the old notes and see if I fix the change or if it's still something that is a problem for me. But it allows me to not really worry about the creative part of the workflow when I'm making edits like that. I'm just making mechanical changes based off of a list of things that need to be changed. And the same things with to-do lists. I do really feel that it's important to just kind of embrace that whole thing, because I used to make a to-do list and then basically add to it throughout the day, where it's just like, well, this is important too, I should be doing this, and all this is important too, I should be doing, and then all of a sudden my to-do list is completely unwieldy and I haven't gotten anything done because my priorities are all messed up. But these days, what I do basically right before I go to bed is I sit down and I write my to-do list for the next day. And that gives me the opportunity to essentially think about what I completed today. And I still have kind of maybe some things that I didn't finish on time today. And it's like, okay, well, those are my top priorities for tomorrow. And then these are the other things I want to take care of. And when I wake up tomorrow, I know what I need to do. And I just have to trust that the list is accurate. And sometimes it's not. Like sometimes I forget about things or something comes up that I have to take care of. But, that's just life. That's not something that you can really plan for. But I really, really strongly believe that trusting yourself is important. And I used to have a terrible memory. I used to not be able to remember stuff and like directions or like maps or anything like that, people, places. But I've kind of learned to just kind of trust my intuition with that stuff and forcing myself to remember things and like training the remembering part of my brain. And that's helped a lot. And I don't really have any advice on how to exactly do that, aside from just trying a lot. And I think a lot of the ways that I trained myself in this, and this is a little off topic, but it's kind of interesting for me, is I essentially forced myself to remember stuff. And if I needed to remember stuff, I tried to remember it first and I got my best guess and then I looked it up to see if I was right rather than just looking it up initially. And I mean, that's kind of just like, oh, people shouldn't rely on computers so much these days and stuff like that. But really, I think that it is important that you still need to rely on your mind and your memory for a lot of this because it's something that you're kind of stuck with. And it's always nice to have a computer to verify everything that's happening. But I think it's also much nicer to be able to recall this stuff on your own without having to rely on a computer. And my memory is by nowhere, it's nowhere near perfect. Like I still have a really hard time remembering faces and names, but when it comes to destinations and places and times and stuff like that, I'm a lot better with it. That's actually the same thing that I do with spelling as well, where if I am writing something out or typing something out and that little red line appears underneath it, I don't immediately go to spell check and fix it. I try to rewrite it manually until I get it correct. Or if I can't get it correct, then I go to the spell check. And even then I see what the correct word is and then I type it out to try to reinforce that idea that it's like, okay, this is how you spell it correctly. This is how I'm going to type it. And you're trying to like burn that into your memory. I got a little off topic, but that's fine. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening today. And thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter. I really genuinely do appreciate it. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend and I will talk to you in the next one. Be remarkable.